Good afternoon. Tomorrow it's going to be a heat wave, 38 degrees. Are you guys like freezing? I went to the swimming pool after I left the tennis court and it's just like 20 minutes. I was like, there's just no way that I want to be in cold water after being outdoors just 2 seconds walking to the car and you're like, brrr. Next year I'm spending the winter in Florida. I said that last year, but this year has just been ridiculous. So, how are you guys doing? Are you doing okay? I'm excited about today because I am going to make for you, show you how to put together one of my absolute favorite raw dishes, and that is falafel. Did I ever tell you the story when I went to Egypt and I better not go there because we don't have a lot of time as usual. But I'll have to tell you the story. I'll tell you as I'm making the falafels. Remind me to tell the falafel story. So today we are in a gospel, Mark. For those, my dad asked me 20 minutes ago when he called me as I was rushing to get here. He's like, what are you doing? Are you busy? And I was like, I'm going to be busy in 20 minutes. When I get home, I'll have to do the video. What video? My preaching video. Oh, what are you preaching about? Well, I've been walking people through the Gospel of Mark for the last 3 years, and today we're going to be talking about as the disciples came down from the Mount of Transfiguration and how it resonates with what we're dealing with today in terms of the anxiety, the fear, and just the lack of hope that people have. It's what the disciples were experiencing when Jesus kept telling him that he was going to go to the cross and that he would have to die. So now I've told you about what we're going to be talking about today. But there was a reason I was mentioning my dad, and I don't remember what it was. So nevertheless, Mark 9 verses, I have on there, I believe, verses 11 through 13. But we're actually going to be reading chapter 9, verses 9 through 13. So 2 weeks ago we talked about, I think it was 3 weeks ago. I looked on my calendar and it looks like I was with you guys January the 30th. Did we miss last week for some reason? That was Valentine's Day, but I'm not sure why we didn't video. But here we are. And so the last time that we did meet, we were talking about the very, very important incident where Jesus took 3 of the disciples, the close 3, up to the mount, and he was transfigured right before their eyes, white as snow. And then Elijah and Moses appeared with him. And so Peter jumped out and says, oh, we should stay here and we should build monuments for you guys. And Jesus is like, no. And then all of a sudden they were there alone together, just the 3 of them, the 4 of them, as it was before. And now they're coming away, walking away from that experience. Just imagine that experience, if you could. We went through that 2 weeks ago. So now they're leaving. And so this is where we pick up. And the Word of God, New King James Version says, now as they came down from the mountain, he commanded them that they should tell no one the things that they had seen till the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept this word to themselves, questioning what the rising from the dead meant. And they asked him, saying, why do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? Then he answered and told them, indeed, Elijah is coming first and restores all things. And how is it written concerning the Son of Man, that he must suffer many things and be treated with contempt? But I say to you that Elijah has also come, and they did to him whatever they wished, as it is written of him. Gotta kind of know and understand what we've already explained before. I think it was at the beginning of this chapter, at the end of chapter 8, about the understanding of messiahship. So the understanding of messiahship was that this king was going to come and restore the people of Israel and take over everybody and just have them in charge, and everybody would be bowing to their feet. And of course, that is the opposite of what's going to take place. The two are diametrically opposed because now you have Jesus coming entering on a lowly donkey and going to a cross to be crucified. And so 10 seconds off of coming off of this amazing experience, Jesus says that the Son of Man must die. So now they're questioning themselves and saying, okay, if the Son of Man has to rise from the dead and you're about to die, and if you are indeed the Son of Man, then what about Elijah? Because our understanding of Messiahship was that there would be a forerunner. The forerunner would be Elijah. Elijah would come. In fact, at that time, they believed that Elijah would come 3 days before the Messiah would come. And on the first day, he would shout from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth, "The Lord is good." And then the next day, he would shout, "The Lord is good, salvation. Salvation is coming. Salvation is coming" was on the third day. The second day, the first day was "the Lord is good." The second day was something. And then the third day was that salvation is coming. And then the Messiah would come. And so they're saying, if you're in fact going to die, which means that you're already here, then whatever happened to Elijah? And so this is the part that's interesting. Not interesting, but it's profound, because Jesus says, yeah, well, Elijah came as John the Baptist. That's what he's insinuating here. Because you know that they put John the Baptist in jail and executed him. King Herod had his head taken off. He was beheaded at the request of his daughter-in-law because of that whole incident that happened. But he's saying he came, the forerunner came. The one that you were anticipating, the one that you were looking forward to, the one that would announce my coming, indeed came and announced my coming. And what did you do to look how you treated him? In essence, and what Jesus is saying is that this is the way you treated the forerunner. It only goes, as it is written, how you're going to treat the Son of God, how you're going to actually treat the Messiah. If that's what you did to the forerunner, I'm not surprised. This is how you want to treat me. You shouldn't be surprised either. But that's what we're saying because we know the entire Bible. But imagine, I always tell people, put yourself in the shoes when we want to point our fingers at the disciples' lack of belief and understanding. Put yourself in the shoes of the other individual. And to put yourself in the shoes of them is to go back and say, this man was healing people. He was doing all these miraculous things. And now he's telling us he's going to die. How's he going to die when he's the one that we're bringing people back to life from being dead? That doesn't make sense. So when we start thinking about it like that, you can only imagine what? The anxiety, the fear, the doubt, the hopelessness, the lack of encouragement that these guys had. And isn't it interesting that we would be studying this at this point in time when we're dealing with the same thing all of these thousands of years later in terms of everything that's happening in the political environment right now? If you look at most people, if you have conversations with most Christians, disciples, they are filled with anxiety, filled with fear, filled with doubt, hopelessness. And why? So here's what's interesting. Jesus told them, do not go and tell anyone what you've seen. We've heard this several times before in this gospel. Every time that he healed or cast out demons, the demonic spirits, he would always have to tell them, because they would be the ones that would bow down in the street, kneel down, and call out the Son of God. The first time that he ever dealt with an unclean spirit, that first Sunday that he went and taught in the synagogue, the first thing the unclean spirit said was, let us alone. What do we have to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? We know who you are, the Son of God. And Jesus immediately rebuked them and told them to be quiet and come out of the man. And then several times later, when he started preaching in all the synagogues throughout Galilee and casting out demons, continuously he had to tell them, do not speak of what's happening to you. Even the man with the leprosy, he came to him and he begged him, implored him, if you are willing, I know that you can make me clean. And Jesus, immediately after he said, I will, and I can, he did that. And Jesus warned, he said it strictly warned him to go on your way And do not say anything to anyone about this, but show yourself to the priest and present the things that Moses requires as a testimony of your healing. And the reason that he was doing this all the time was because the demonic spirits knew who he was. And then if they were to reveal that or to say it and have people pondering about it and thinking along with the miracles that he's doing, maybe this is the Messiah, and then they would just have a coup. Because they had their own idea and concept of what was going to start happening when the Messiah came on the scene. And they wanted that so much that they would have overthrown what Jesus' agenda was and the things that he was doing and try and force him to be who they needed and wanted him to be at that time. And so sometimes when we start thinking, we already have our plan, we start convincing ourselves that what we're doing is the will of God. When you put something in your head, and you start to solidify it that this is it. You know yourself how difficult it is for someone to come and convince you that it's not. And so the moral of this story as it relates to today is that the reason that the disciples are walking in the presence of God, the Son of God, walking in the presence of the one who can do anything. And yet they're fearful, they're anxious. Why? Because they refuse to accept the truth. They couldn't hear the truth that was coming from their Lord because they were stuck on their own belief in what they had come to realize in life. And that's the hardest thing today for people to do, is to change their thought patterns and to even listen to something that is contrary to what they've been taught, contrary to what they believe, contrary to what they've begun to build their dreams and hopes off of. And if we're going to be stuck like that, then this is why we're anxious today. This is why we're fearful today. Because the Word of God gives us too many promises for situations like this, that we are to be able to have a peace that surpasses the understanding of everything that's going on right now. I heard a wonderful sermon on Sunday. And the point that came out at the end was, because I don't remember what the rest of it was, but one of his third point was that it had to happen. And at times like this, people often look to us who believe in God. They don't necessarily believe in God, and they'll say, well, where's your God now? And how could he let something like this happen? And the thing is that it had to, is what the pastor said. It had to happen. And that's a wonderful explanation. It had to happen. And guess what? We're going to be okay in whatever happens, because he's promised that no matter what happens, that he will work things out for our good when we believe, trust, and follow him and are called by his name. It's as simple as that. It's not simple in the sense that we don't want to put your fears, anxieties to the side, but we want you to shift your focus from the anxiety, the fears, what's going on around us, and tune into the light, tune into the cross, tune into God. Go and read your Bible more often during this period. Shut down the noise, the distractions, social media, the news, anything that's important. Someone's going to tell you what needs to be. Sometimes we just need to do a spiritual break from everything that's going on, the noise, and just allow ourselves to be so deep in the Word of God, so deep in communication with God, increasing our prayer time and length during periods like this, a season of prayer and fasting, just to calm us down and get us to be refocused on the thing that we already know, that we already have the victory, and that everything is going to be okay. Do you know? I can't emphasize that enough during this period. I've seen some people that you just really go, wow. Do you know, it's kind of shocking almost. It's like, and I say it, it's becoming a cliche, that I don't think that we believe in what we're selling. And so when we get like this, and it's a time for revival. This is a great time for revival. And so that's where we are. next week, not next week, but well, I guess it is next week, in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about the boy that Jesus healed. So we're coming out of some of the deep stuff. We're on our way to the cross, and there's going to have a couple of miracles take place on the way. I do want to mention, because someone sent me a text, and since we're trying to keep folks well, I understand that the website that people can typically go and get free COVID tests, the president is shutting down tonight at midnight. So if you have a link, you might want to go on and order you some free kits before that happens. If you don't have a link, if I can remember, because someone sent it to me, I will post it. I will post it in the chat area within an hour or so. So let me tell you quickly about my trip to Israel. When I went to Israel, believe it or not, so whenever I travel abroad, I usually have my own travel agent on the other side that arranges my accommodation so that I can be really cultural centric. And this was before cell phones were what they are. And so I arrived, and typically every year for my birthday, I would go to another country for 2 or 3 weeks. And there'd always be somebody there with a little sign with my name on it. And so at this time, at 2 o'clock it was about 2 o'clock in the morning when the plane landed. And the airport was packed with people. So, you're just not as concerned. But I must say that typically I'm one of the first people off the plane, and my little sign people were like right there. I didn't see anyone, and then all of a sudden it was like 2 people left in the airport. It just dispersed so quickly. Long story short, would you believe that the person that was coming to pick me up at the airport had a heart attack and died on the way to coming to get me? And it just so happened that I had the agent who arranged everything. I had her number outside of my bags, outside of my luggage. And then there was this nice guy at the airport. When I first got there, he was like, are you lost? Like within the first 10, 15 minutes. And I'm like to myself, I'm at an airport, how am I going to be lost? And then when the airport started emptying out, he came, because he had a little shop there. He came and asked me again, are you sure you're okay? So I'm okay. And then when everybody was gone, I was like, okay, I'm not okay. And so I gave him the woman's information. And he came back in like 5 minutes and says, okay, she's on her way. And I was thinking, okay, there's something tricky going on here. That was too fast or whatever. But it ended up that she was on her way. She had to get her daughter because she didn't drive. And then that's when we didn't find out the guy had died until like the next day. And so he had all of my paperwork to get into the hotel that I was staying in. And we had to wait until the morning manager came in, which was like, say 9 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. So for 7 hours, this woman and her daughter entertained me until I could get into my hotel room. It was good because the traffic there is like New York City on steroids traffic. It was absolutely crazy. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, there weren't many cars out, but all the mosques were open. So we were able to go and see so much more than I would have ever got to see on the regular tour buses during the regular day hours, because traffic was just ridiculous. And this stuff, this soot that would come from the air, you couldn't see like 100 feet in front of you once the traffic's picked up. And at night you could see because the traffic wasn't there and things were clear. But I had to go to all of the fabulous mosques. So we went everywhere because we had 7 hours basically. And the markets, the food markets are open all night. And so we went to one of the food markets, and when I tell you I was hungry, and they were like, oh, let's get some falafel. Oh my God. I think I must have eaten 50 pounds of falafel that morning. It was so good. And ever since then, every time I have falafel, I'm just like, this can't touch the falafel I had in Egypt. The one in Georgetown comes close, but not really. But This raw version of falafel, to die for. I just made some, like, maybe right after I did last week's, the last video, when I, once I get in the mood for pulling out the dehydrator, I'm always playing around. I made some raw tuna fish yesterday out of sunflower seeds and chickpeas, and that came out really well. So it's the same recipe. Basically what happens is it's all about the seasoning blends. And so with the tuna fish, obviously a lot of powdered kelp, a lot of dulse, to give it that fishy taste. But basically the substance of sunflower seeds and chickpeas, you can make a meatloaf and just put the barbecue sauce in there. I mean, just it's a ton of things you can do. But this is really easy, and this is one of the few ones you can actually use the blender for. And so I'm going to tell you the ingredients, which are all great for you, because if you're on the raw thing, you're trying to worry about your protein intake, we're using chickpeas. So these are sprouted chickpeas, and once we sprout the chickpeas in and of themselves have a really decent protein value. But whenever you sprout something and it starts to grow, then you're basically doubling that content. So this is what a sprouted chickpea looks like. See the little hook tail there? And that's about as much of a tail that you want to grow on it. And if you're in a hurry and you just want to do something, as long as you soak them at least for 8 hours to break the skin, to bring it back to life, and from the dehydrated state to the hydrated state, because that's what you want to do. So chickpeas, a ton of protein for you, lots of other good stuff. Sunflower seeds, the same thing. Nuts and seeds are always great. And so sunflower seeds, we often tell you what color is the sunflower seed. It's yellow because it comes from the yellow sunflower, and yellow foods are great natural laxatives. But there are lots of minerals and vitamins in the sunflower seeds. Then, of course, with everything, we're using onions and raw garlic. So we have about 2-3 tablespoons of minced garlic. Have about a half of a red onion. We have raw tahini. We have extra virgin cold pressed olive oil. We have lemon juice. We have tamari, which is like your natural soy sauce. And then what makes falafel? Cilantro, fresh parsley. What's going to make you feel like you're in Egypt? Cumin, curry, and I put a little orange dried peel just to give it a little something. You can use that, or you can use a dried lime. Sometimes you just take the peel off of a lime or lemon and you add that into something. It gives it a big twist. But I usually keep some dried orange peel and some dried lemon peel for things like falafel and other exotic dishes. It just really gives it that little You can do that, or you can use a chutney. And chutney tends to get a little messy for me. So these are our ingredients. Once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 5 ingredients. Look at this. I just came from somewhere, so didn't really have time to change. So I have like this little coat thing on. But I didn't have to, because I knew we were putting this together. And this is such a simple dish. It's so simple that you can just do it, And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the liquids, because we're using the blender, and this is live video. So sometimes this can get a little tricky, and sometimes if it does, you just dump all of the ingredients into a larger food processor. But if you can blend it, it comes in the batch that I did a couple of weeks ago. I did blend it, but I don't think I was making as much. So good. They're little balls. You're going to see what we do, and then you put them on the dehydrator. And the great thing about falafel, unlike the barbecue kale chips and the garlicky cheese kale chips that I did the other day, they can take 12 to 16 hours. Where did I put those chips? Take 12 to 16 hours to get crunchy. The falafel only needs to stay on here for 4 hours. So as soon as I jump off here, I got 2 Zoom meetings, and I'm hoping by the time I'm done, my little falafel will be ready. So these are the cheesy, garlicky kale chips. You can buy the whole kale and tear it into larger pieces if you want larger chips. But these were like shredded garlic. Chopped kale. in the little 5-pound bag. You just open them up, pour them into a bowl. Make the cheese sauce with garlic and lemon juice, peppercorns, tamari, lots of garlic. Blend it. It's a 5-minute dish. Because one evening I was like, I'm going to want me some kale chips tomorrow. And I just, before I went to bed, it took me 10, 15 minutes max. And I had the packaged triple washed kale already done. So here we are. Put all of your liquid ingredients in, because sprouted chickpeas takes a little And once you've done this for a while, what you do is you use bowls that are about the same size. But when you're doing raw, you can never have too much garlic. You can never have too much olive oil. You can never have too much. You can have too much tamari. You don't want to go overboard on the tamari. You can get it where it's wheat-free. Some has lower sodium than others. This is the tahini. You always want to get a good brand of tahini, because if not, it can be a little thick. So we're going to take all of this out of these bowls. So yeah, that's just an easy trick to doing anything, is you put your liquid ingredients in where the blade is. Get things churning. And you kind of start rolling it just for a second, and then you start putting your other things in. So we don't have as much liquid. We can always add a little water if we need to. We're gonna lightly, so garlic and red onions have some liquid there. You know, all vegetables and fruits too. So we're gonna put that in there. Then we're gonna add our last 2 ingredients. We wanna put this on. So you see we're gonna make falafel balls. So keep in mind the texture that we're making them. Now, before you let things get to the point where they're gonna start getting a little thick, put your powdered ingredients in. Turn. Just fold it in. Then we're gonna put half of these sunflower seeds that are sprouted. If you're using sprouted seeds, you don't have to soak them. These were regular raw sunflower seeds. So I soaked them for a couple of hours. So they're still damp. Put that back on batter. Okay, so what we're gonna do is get to turn this a little. I should have had a little water. And of course that's distilled water. My tea. Probably put too much water in, but it's okay. I have more sunflower seeds over there. Remember, you want these to be little like meatballs. I'm going to put my cilantro, because that really gives you the whole flavor of falafel, and just a little of the parsley right now. You can already smell it. Smells like we're in Egypt. Okay. Once I drop the rest of that parsley in, see, this is how you want it to be. So you're going to drop them in as little balls. You can make falafel balls or falafel patties. They're absolutely wonderful on top of salads. They're so good just to eat by themselves. So amazing. Just had so much fun having 4 or 5 of these every day. I made some garlic bread, raw bread, to eat with it. It was wonderful. So, you guys try. I don't know if you guys have been trying the recipes, but man, if you just hit save or however you do it to be able to come back and do this, I guarantee you, you will not feel like you're doing anything healthy when you consume these. Now, for those of you who don't have dehydrators, you could do the same thing by putting it onto a pan into the oven on the warm dowel. So basically what the dehydrator does is it gives you an opportunity to prepare foods without allowing them to be prepared at temperatures that exceed 107, 109 degrees. After that, the vital, all of those great nutrients that we're sprouting the beans with, they just go away. So we have yummy smelling raw falafel. It's only going to take 3 to 4 hours to put it onto the dehydrator just to extract the moisture from it. And then you don't want it to get to a point where it's hard. That would be like 7 to 8 hours. We're going to just take little balls and put them onto the Pyrex sheet on the dehydrator. And what's going to happen in about 4 to 5 hours is that the exterior will get a little hard. Not really, just still is going to be tender, but it's going to be super moist on the inside. And then you can just, what I usually do, the dehydrator up here. So when I take the dehydrator down and I'm doing things like this, I'll leave it out for a couple of weeks. And so what you can do after you refrigerate the falafel balls, you can turn the dehydrator on like 50 degrees, 90 degrees, and then just let them warm up if you want them to have like a warm feeling. Or you can just take them out in the morning and let them sit out all day long and let them get to room temperature and consume them like that with your salad. Or whenever I do things like this, I'm going to be making raw bread. So I have sprouted wheat. So I'm going to make some raw toast, some raw bread, some carrot bread, and some things. And just have lots of fun with this. I hope that's been helpful to you. Rewind and replay this piece. If you're feeling fearful and anxious, just remember that God is on the throne. And every day there's some shocking stuff coming out of the White House, so you need to kind of shut it down. But just remember that none of this shocked Jesus. God Almighty knew everything that's happening today, and he also knows what's going to happen tomorrow, as he's known what happened yesterday. And so in all of that, he still gives us all of those promises. And so we should take some confidence and some assurance in that things are going to be just fine. Things are fine. And be well, focus on that. In 2 weeks, what is it? 2 weeks is rolling into March. I've got my 61st birthday coming up in just a few weeks. So I will see you before then. There's a lot going on in the month of March. Ash Wednesday, I believe, is the next time that we meet. Thinking we're going to do a 40-day juice fast this year. Yeah. Okay, so it's been fun. Thanks for joining me. If you have any questions whatsoever, as you know, just shoot them my way, and I will usually review this and answer your questions and say hello to you guys within a day. Thank you for joining us. Take care.